Let's kick it off with the NFC East. And this is a division that was won by the Dallas Cowboys last year. They had the #1 seed in the NFC. And what did they do? But they proceeded to choke in the playoffs like they do every year. Right, Dylan?
I don't know what the middle finger is up.
All I get is the middle finger. But anyways, we have a lot of storylines actually in this division. First off, Dallas Cowboys. Ezekiel Elliott is going to be suspended. He actually just put in an appeal for this suspension. So will it be 6 games? Will it be 4? Will it be 2? We'll have to see. But that's going to impact the Cowboys a lot on the field. Of course, Zeke is one of the top 3 running backs in the NFL. You can safely assume that. And he's a big impact player. So that's going to impact the Cowboys. The Cowboys also had a lot going on with their defense, a lot of new rookies and new players on that defense. Dak Prescott's second year as the starting quarterback. Des Bryant should be back healthy, so a lot going on with the Cowboys. New York Giants, of course, the circus of the New York Giants. They brought in Brandon Marshall this offseason to pair with Odell Beckham. That's going to be one of the best duos in the league. A lot of people looking at the Giants saying that they have one of the best defenses and now one of the best receiving cores. A lot of people are high on the Giants, including myself, which we'll get into. The Philadelphia Eagles, of course, Adam's team, They just made a big trade that I think helped them in their playoff run this year. They do have a chance for the playoffs, and even a couple of experts have been picking them to go there. And Carson Wentz, second year, they brought in some weapons. Alshon Jeffrey, they just got rid of Ryan Matthews today, but got LeGarrette Blount in the backfield and upgraded their secondary a little bit just recently. The Redskins are a team that a lot of people are very quiet on because the Eagles, Giants, and Cowboys just by their nature get a lot of kind of storylines and stuff like that. But the Redskins did get Terrell Pryor in the offseason, and in my opinion is an upgrade to both Deshaun Jackson and Pierre Garçon. They have one of the best offenses in the league, one of the best ascending quarterbacks in the league. And on defense, they brought in some help. Zach Brown's going to help that defense out. They had some nice draft picks. They have a pretty good pass rush. So this whole division is going to be very competitive. Let's start off with the Dallas Cowboys. What do we think about the Dallas Cowboys this season?
I think there's some interesting things to go for the Cowboys. Obviously, the 6-game suspension, I think it will get lowered. I still think it'll probably be a 4-game suspension perhaps. But in any case, the defense is getting a lot of new additions with a bunch of people leaving, obviously. Early on, they had to go draft a couple of people, so some first-year players on defense. I think Dak Prescott, he's going to have to show out and shine in his second year, showing that the first year wasn't a fluke because a lot of people want to make that comparison. I think it'll be an interesting year for this team. I think there's got to be some new talents that are going to stand out. Ryan Switzer's going to be a nice wide receiver addition. Rico Gathers has been doing some stuff in the preseason that might get him a couple of touches this year as the tight end. I think it'll be an interesting season. I'll wait on my prediction, but I think I might surprise people with my record prediction over these guys. But with the 6-game suspension possibly lower for Ezekiel Elliott, that's going to be a huge thing for the Cowboys early on in the season.
For me, I think the biggest problem with the Cowboys is going to be that 6-game suspension. I do not think it's going to get lowered because if you think for domestic violence, the minimum is 6 games. So if they do drop it, the NFL is saying that they're not going to play by their rules that they set in motion. I don't think we're going to see – it's a lot different than the Tom Brady situation because we're dealing with something off the field and not the Tom Brady situation was something to do with actual football. It wasn't like – the outside integrity of the person. Obviously, they kind of put Tom Brady's name through the mud on the football side, but no one was ever really going after Tom Brady that much as a person off the field. And I think when you're talking about domestic violence, it's a 6-game minimum. That's what they said it's going to be. And I think they've screwed up in the past that there's no way they could drop this because then they're going to look very bad in this situation. Before I go to my prediction, I think they only maybe max get out of that first 6 games. They got some tough games. Max get out 3-3. I could even see 2-4 if without Zeke in those first 6 games. Other than that, I think Prescott it's going to be a bit different. Teams are going to scheme for him with no Zeke too early on this season. It's easy to play quarterback when you're looking at 2nd and 4, 3rd and 2. It's a lot easier to play quarterback, and that's what Zeke does. Gets 7-8 yards a run on a first down to shorten up the field for for Prescott. On the defensive side, I think you guys got a lot worse. You know, you have Nolan Carroll as your starting cornerback. I saw him a lot. He is not a starter. I'm not
going to defend that.
I don't know. I think Skandrick, I've always kind of liked Skandrick, but they're kind of between him playing the nickel or actually starting. Jeff Heath, decent. And then Byron Jones, if I'm not mistaken, this is his first year playing safety.
Yes.
So that's a different story too, right? You're getting a guy that hasn't played safety. And I just think the Wilcox-Church combination, for me as an Eagles fan, always destroyed us. And they played very well. And I don't think they can play as well as they did last season, which helped them win some games.
Go.
For me, I think the interesting thing, I'm with Adam. I don't think it's going to be lower than 6 games. I think, and if I was the Cowboys, I would actually suggest Elliott doesn't appeal the suspension, considering the schedule later in the year for them, which is actually
he already has though.
Yeah, I wouldn't have done it, but that's okay because they end their season against the Raiders, Seahawks, and Eagles after Week 14 at the Giants. So they have a tough end of the schedule. Their defense, I've never been a big fan of their defense, but they did enough to go 13-3 last year. I don't think that they're going to win 13 games, but I do think that there's enough weapons on this team that they can survive the first 6 games. If they can go 3-3, I think that they're going to be okay. Their start is going to be very important. Don't forget Cole Beasley. I think he'll be a big factor in this. To me, I think Dallas can still win this division. And when we talk about the Giants, I'll kind of explain why. But I still think the Cowboys are my pick to win the East. So with about 11 wins.
Okay. So we'll give like all our win totals after we talk about each team in the division, I guess. But so for the Cowboys, I talked about them a little bit, but I talked about them also in my Zeke suspension video. I kind of went through how it impacts the division, the NFC, the league, and even the Cowboys. What Adam was referring to with, and I thought he made some really good points, it puts a lot of pressure on Dak Prescott because now he talked about the situational football, but it also impacts there's not as many guys in the box. There's going to be more coverage on Dez. You know, Zeke does a little bit like, he'll make what looks like a 3 or 4 yard run into a 5 or 6 or maybe even a 10-yard run because he'll break a tackle, then he'll make a first down or something like that. And Darren McFadden, like, you look at when Darren McFadden was the running back after DeMarco Murray, they were a bad team. And he still had 1,000 yards. So, I mean, and I'm not saying they're going to be bad, but I'm saying, like, that difference is huge for that offense because now you get rid of kind of the effectiveness of Dak Prescott off the play action. You get rid of that effectiveness of the read option. You get rid of a part of this offense that made this offense so dynamic. So it's going to be a lot more on Dak Prescott, the passer, and the straight up, can I do this like Matt Stafford instead of can I do this like, I don't know, someone else, Russell Wilson. So that's just my opinion on that. The defensively does have me concerned. It had me concerned before the whole Zeke suspension thing. I'm really concerned about the secondary. Now, I will give credit to Marinelli, who was the coach last year. This year, he did a really good job with limited talent, so maybe he can do it again. They have good linebackers. The defensive is pretty good, the front, but I don't know if it's like great or anything that can really mask for the issues and the deficiencies back in the secondary. And the last thing I want to just say, and you guys didn't bring this up at all, and maybe we kind of did with the Zeke suspension, but this team's been in a lot of trouble, a lot of distractions, a lot of off-the-field issues. I don't think that's going to help them. So I want to hear what you guys have for the, I guess, record for the Dallas Cowboys.
My record prediction is 10-6. I think they will be 3-3 to go off of the first 6 games. Hopefully they can survive that. They'll play some difficult competition, but I think they will be a wild card team with that considered.
Yeah, for me, I have them at 9-7 because if they do go 3-3 or 2-4, I still think even with Zeke coming back, I think it has some damage. And as Kevin said, the later in the season, they have some tough games as well. So I have them 9-7 just because of that NFC East too. I kind of only had 2 teams with 10 or plus wins in that division. So I kind of have to, I can't have Dallas winning more than 9 games just because I have 2 NFC teams above the Dallas Cowboys. we'll get into that because obviously you probably know which one of them is for sure. But yeah, 9-7. I think they don't make the playoffs. I think the NFC East is too tough, and I think with, like Mitch said, with so much going on, I think this might just be a lull season. Maybe some growing pains for Prescott, and they refocus for next year because this is a good team. You have a good core. I just think this might be an off season, kind of like we've seen with Carolina before. Good team, just with some problems, and then. We've seen this before. So I think even with the best running back in the league, missing 6 games, that's way too much time for him to miss. I think if he doesn't get suspended and he plays the whole season, yeah, I think they're 11-12 win season, 12-win team. But just because of that 6-game suspension, I have them at 9-7.
I'm going to stick with 11-5. I think they're going to have a rough start and a rough end. But I look at that offensive line, and there's no one better. There's no line better than the offensive line, certainly not this team. Anyway, we'll get into that. And I just look at 2 of the other teams in this division we'll get into. When it comes down to, do I think that they can win a big game at the important time? The answer is no. And that's why I'm kind of sticking with an 11-5. I do think that they can win I still think they can win the NFC East, even with a 6-game suspension with Ezekiel Elliott. I'll explain why when we talk about the Giants.
So, but with that defense, with that prediction, you must think then, because if you look at some of the big games they won, yes, the offense played great, but that defense made some big plays. So you got to expect that defense is going to make those big plays late in games like they did to win some of the games last season.
Yeah, that's I think kind of I do see them doing things like that. I think there's going to be a lot of shootouts and high-scoring games with the Cowboys, but I think that there's going to be 2 or 3 games that they can win in spite of themselves. So, and one of them will be against the Giants for sure.
Bring it, Cowboys fans! This is my prediction right now. 7-9 for the Dallas Cowboys this year. They will finish last in the division. Too many off-the-field issues. Defense is the worst in the division. And I just don't see how – it's just going to be a down year. Their schedule is too tough. They're playing a number 1 seed schedule. They're playing in the best division in the NFC. Too many tough games for your best player to miss 6 of them. So that's why I have them last in the division. You can rebuttal, Dylan, if you like.
It's your opinion. I don't agree. But at the end of the day, they're going to play some competition. Let me look at that. We've been bringing up the 6 games, the stretch here. I want to pull it up real quick. Okay, so the Cowboys play the Giants on Sunday Night Football. That could be a tough game. They play the Broncos, the Cardinals, the Rams, the Packers, and the 49ers. I think they'll beat the Cardinals for sure. I think
there's 3 wins in there for sure.
I think they'll lose 4 games.
Yeah, that's why I said I don't think there's 3 wins for sure. I think they lose the Giants, they lose the Broncos, Cardinals is up in the air, and they lose the Packers. And I think 49ers, Rams. They shouldn't have a problem with them even without. That Cardinals game, I think they're guaranteed 3 losses in my opinion. I don't think they go into.
I wouldn't guarantee 3 losses.
I don't go into Broncos with that defense to beat
the Packers and the Broncos. I will
not the Giants week 1.
That's gonna be a different. I don't want to guarantee. I don't think it's a guarantee.
It's not a guarantee, but I think
nothing's a guarantee. But if you're looking at it from I don't know. I'm
still saying they're going 3-3, possibly to a 4-2. I'm not going to guarantee anything here. But the other stretch that Kev was talking about was that late season stretch where they got to play some pretty difficult teams towards the end of the stretch. So I think they'll lose a couple of those games there, probably the Raiders and either one game between the Giants and the Seahawks and maybe more the Eagles, one of those 3 games. I still think they'll go 10-6. I
just don't necessarily see it as a thing of talent. I see it as a thing of it's going to spiral out of control. So much has happened that I don't think they'll be able to weather the storm. And because the rest of the division is so good, I just think it's going to be a down year. They might be good again next year, which I think they probably will bounce back next year. But I don't think that I just think this year is not their year. That's just my opinion on it. The next team in the NFC East we're going to discuss is the New York Giants. The New York Giants is a team that made the playoffs last year, is a team that some people were picking even to beat the Green Bay Packers in that first week because they kind of had a pretty successful run and everyone was looking at their defense. That did not end up happening. Of course, we had the whole Odell Beckham scenario on the on the boat, I guess. We'll just call it a boat. On the boat. And this season, the Giants are coming in as maybe the favorite of the NFC East. I think it's between the Cowboys and the Giants. And I think more people, because of this Zeke situation, are looking at the Giants as the favorite. The Giants definitely probably have the best defense from last year to this year. They have a very good D-line. They have one of the best secondaries in the league. They have, in my opinion, the best safety in the league. I know Kev's not going to like that, but Landon Collins is a beast.
Yeah.
And their corners are very good. Offensively, the biggest concerns for them, as every team does have a concern, their offensive line is not the greatest, specifically their tackle situation. Their left tackle situation is one of the weakest, probably the weakest in the division for sure. And maybe even one of the weakest in the league. With I think it's Eric Flowers, who's supposed to be the projected starter for that position. We'll see if he can work out, and because he was bad last year. But if he can be better, then this team's looking up. But their interior line is pretty good. Their running back situation is iffy. They don't have any like star running back like Elliott on the Cowboys or anything like that. Perkins is supposed to be the starter, but Darkwa is fighting for that position as well, and Vereen is their third down back. So they have a few guys that they can throw in there. And they're definitely their receivers, no question, a ton of talent. Odell, I think, at the end of the year is going to be looked at as the best receiver in the game. Again, you guys can hate me for that comment, whatever you want. Brandon Marshall is going to be in the conversation at the end of his career for Hall of Fame. We have Sterling Shepard, who he's hurt right now, but he's a really good slot receiver. Then they drafted Evan Ingram at tight end. They haven't had a tight end weapon in a long time, but he is a guy that can at least, in the passing game, impact the game. Run game's a little iffy, but pass game definitely impacted. So they have a ton of weapons to surround Eli. One of the biggest questions with this team is Eli Manning. Is Eli Manning going to be good Eli, or is he going to be bad Eli? That's the question. I think with these weapons, he'll be good Eli, but I'm interested to hear what you guys think.
Surprisingly enough, I think this team is going to do pretty solid. They've got a really good defense. They built up on it. They wanted to spend their money on it because it's been a weakness of them for many of years, and they did some pretty good pickups last season with Olivier Vernon, Janoris Jenkins, two guys I really did despise as a Cowboys fan watching them having to play us 2 times a year, but in the rest of the games, I appreciated them for what they were doing to making that team better. They have one of the best receiver cores in the game. You have Odell Beckham Jr., who I will not say is the number 1 receiver in the game, and I will not say that after the year. I still think that goes to Julio Jones. But you still have an amazing top 5 receiver. We'll put that out there. Brandon Marshall, I think, was an excellent pickup for them. And Sterling Shepard, who is injured right now, but I did see some good things out of him his rookie year, and I really enjoy what I think he's going to do his sophomore year. In terms of the running back situation, not a big fan of. It's been very sketchy, just not anything flashy. But then again, in the last couple of years, they've always had that problem. And the offensive line is whatever. My biggest problem always with this team is what Eli Manning can do and if he can provide anything past a mediocre season. However, with this receiver core and with this defense, I don't think this team can be worse than 11-5. But I'm going with the 12-4 record for the Giants.
Yeah, I'm going 12-4, which I think is going to be good enough to win the NFC East because it's going to be so tight. With the Giants, it's obviously, we've talked about the offense. We've talked about the great defense they have. It's going to come down to Eli, and I think he's got one decent year in him. I don't think this is their chance right now, I think, this year to make a run because Eli, a year older, it's just getting more and more sketchy. Plus, Marshall, it's not like Marshall's a spring chicken, right? You're always going to have Odell, but I think Marshall complements on the wide side, Sterling in the middle. I do like their 4th receiver, Lewis, too. I think he made some big catches, and he's undrafted free agent from like 2 years ago, and he made some catches last season that kind of, they could be well. Look at the new athletic tight end, Ingram. Everyone thought they should go O.J. Howard there. Because wasn't Howard available, and they went Ingram instead?
No, it was Njoku.
Oh, it was Njoku. Okay, that was the bet.
I think.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. Yeah, because everyone thought they might go Njoku, but they go Ingram. Yeah, I think if you look at their corners too, having DRC as your nickel corner You know, with Jenkins, with Eli Apple has been playing really well. Like, they're going to be really tough to beat. There's not many. They're not going to be scared of going against any of the receivers, because I think Janoris Jenkins going against Odell all day. Like, when you go against a Jeffrey or you go against a Dez or you go against a Pryor, I don't think you're as shook as some other teams that don't have a good receiver, because you're not seeing that type of athleticism every single day in practice going head to head. I think that helps them. I'll say they go 12-4, which I think is going to be a lower record for most teams that are going to be winning the division, because I think there's going to be some better teams win the division. So
wow.
That's huge. Even at 12-4, I don't even think that's going to be good enough for the first round bye, in my opinion. It might be, but I wouldn't count on it. I think there's going to be a couple teams at 12-4, and obviously we'll see how the tiebreaker works. But yeah, they're definitely, in my opinion, going to win the NFC East.
There's a lot of things to love about the Giants. You talk about, I think Odell is at least number 2 in receiver. I'm a big fan. Just makes some great catches. I think the defense is great. I would say that the secondary is, if not the best, maybe the second best, depending on your perspective. And I'm not even putting my Homer glasses on. You can make a legitimate case for the Giants have the best secondary in the league. But I look at that offensive line, I look at that running game, and I look at Eli. And the thing is, when I see the Giants in big games, when I say Eli in big games, I see a guy that doesn't do it. He just doesn't.
How could you say that? He's like one of the best all-time playoff quarterbacks ever.
But when I've never been
like that's not factual, bro. You can't sit there and say that.
It is. I've never been a huge Eli fan in a big game. Like, even 2007, even against your Patriots, that was a catch. He wasn't fantastic.
The 2011 playoffs, like, look up his numbers. That's like the greatest playoff run, like, maybe ever.
He's the exact opposite of his brother. He plays terrible in the regular season, but he plays amazing.
And let's be honest too, he hasn't really played in a lot of big games, and it's only those playoff runs, because he hasn't made the playoffs like 5 of the last 6 years. Yeah. He hasn't even had a chance to play in big games.
Yeah, I've never been a fan. I've never.
Okay.
I'm just not. I just
don't think, like, the argument against Eli, I don't think is big games. I think it's something else.
Okay, well, you'll get into that. But to me, I think that there's a lot of games when the Giants are favorites, they just seem to be a different team. And I see them going 10-6. I actually think they are going to lose week 1 to Dallas. I think Dallas will beat them in week 1. At home, that game in Dallas. I just see a couple of games that they just will be trapped. And I don't think that they're as good as people think in that offensive line and that running game. They are going to need at some point, and I think we'll let them down. So I see 10-6.
All right. Yeah. So the argument for Eli, I basically gave you my thoughts on the Giants, but Eli himself, I think the concern with Eli is more the physical ability at this stage in his career. Like, can he still throw the ball down the field as well as he used to be able to, which I don't know if he can do, because last year we were watching that and I don't think he had the same zip or accuracy. But when it comes to playoffs, sometimes there's Eli magic. I don't think that's the argument against him. I think it's the physical ability. Can he still do it? Because he's a smart player. He can do everything like that, mental. And he's also really good in mental situations at the end of games to bring his team back, get the game-winning drive, whatever it may be. But is it the arm? I'm concerned about the arm. But I think it will be okay because the defense will be what's carrying this team. The receiver talent is what's carrying this team. I'm going to say 11-5, and I think they win this division at 11-5. I'm actually on the opposite side of Adam. I don't see a ton of teams in the NFC really separating themselves in elite territory. I think a lot of teams are going to be around 10-6, 11-5 this year.
Well, I was just thinking, when we get into it, but I just think the Packers and the Seahawks have the best chance to have.
I would agree with that.
Less than 4 wins type thing, like maybe 3-4. Obviously, the tiebreaker. It's going to be close, but in my opinion, I think the Seahawks and the Packers, with their division, have the best ability to, put a record up there that's going to be a first round bye no matter what.
All right, Adam, let's kick off the Eagles. What do you guys say about the Eagles?
Whoa!
Okay, my Eagles, I got them somewhat on a spectrum because they do have a tough schedule. They only play 5 teams that last year had, I guess, less than
Under 500.
500. But I don't want to put Washington in there because they were 7-9-1 or whatever, or no, 7-8-1. So without that, then I guess it pushes up to 7. So they do have a tough schedule. Obviously, they play the AFC West, which is going to be tough, and obviously, and then they play the NFC West, which just throw in the Seahawks there. The other 2, those are kind of the freebies I'm hoping for. Okay, when we're talking about the Eagles, obviously bringing in Jeffrey was huge. I think Carson Wentz is now a leader. He's not the rookie anymore, and I think what he's shown off the field when he talks to the media and stuff, that he's very passionate about this team and he's ready to go. I think if you looked in the preseason, the way he moves in the pocket and gets away from pressure is so like people don't really talk about that. But even last season, he has this weird style when he gets around. He's kind of jumping around and then he gets out of pressure. There was that big touchdown he threw to Mac Hollins and the preseason game that showed there. Clay Matthews went right up the middle, had an easy tackle. He got away with it. So obviously that offense, we got Jeffrey. Matthews was surprising that we got rid of him, but what we got back was unbelievable getting Darby. I'll get to the defense in a bit here. And now, like, the running game, getting Blunt is just huge. We never had a big banger. I guess the closest thing we've ever had to that recently was Matthews. But the thing with Matthews is he had fumble problems and injury problems. So we have a good backup to Sproles. Tight end, I think we have some of the best tight ends in the league. Obviously not big name guys, but as a unit, as a whole, Ertz, Trey Burton, which is you're going to see a lot play in the slot a bit more. He makes big catches, and Wentz does like him. And Peterson likes him too, setting up plays around the goal line for him. And then obviously Brent Selleck. So that's the offense, plus the offensive line. If you look at this offensive line with Lane Johnson compared without Lane Johnson when he had to sit out 10 games, we have some of the best tackles, obviously, with Lane Johnson. And
I had them in my top. I had them in my top 3 for my positional rankings.
Jason Peters, and then guard Isaac Simolo, who was I think a 4th round pick a couple of years ago. He's decent. Brandon Brooks I like, and then Jason Kelsey is solid. He actually went through a time where they were going to get rid of him because they didn't like him, but he's kind of proven himself again. So let's quickly go to the defense. In my opinion, one of the most underrated defensive lines in the league, just in the sheer depth that we have. Obviously, bringing in Timmy Jernigan to play beside Fletcher Cox is going to be unbelievable. They're going to stuff the run, I think, from the inside there and get pressure. And then Brandon Graham, who at like 31-30 had his best season ever. I think finally he's liking that he's just in the same defense, because obviously for him, with Chip Kelly going from getting drafted as a 4-3 end, then having to move to outside linebacker with Chip Kelly. Now he's back to the end. He had his best season. Vinny Curry is the other starting D end, but I could see him. He hasn't had the best camp, so I could see Derek Barnett taking over. Derek Barnett had a really good first preseason game. Linebackers, Jordan Hicks, in my opinion, is one of the most underrated middle linebackers in the league. As a 4th round pick a couple of years ago. He's actually one of the best draft picks Chip Kelly probably picked. Michael Kendricks is decent. He has a lot to prove. And now what everyone needs to talk about, obviously, is the defensive backs, which bringing Ronald Darby as a number 1 corner was huge, because we had no one even close to Ronald Darby's skill level. I know Darby had, not the best year last year, but his rookie year and his size, like, he's going to be good. Rodney McLeod, Jenkins, you could say some of the best safeties. A safety combo, underrated, because Jenkins can play all over. Rodney McLeod is solid enough. That wasn't really their problem. The problem is going to be the nickel back and the other corner job, which is Jalen Mills, who was, a 6th round pick 2 years ago. Last year, he's a rookie last year, got some time, but every time they put him against, I don't know if you guys saw that one game against, like, him against Odell, like, there's no contest, right? Could play a little nickel. And Rajul Douglas, who we got in the 3rd round, kind of has size like Sherman, hasn't impressed anyone in training camp so far, which that's kind of a bummer for me because, you know, when we first got Sidney Jones and Rajul Douglas, I'm like, oh, yeah, we're going to start our own Legion of Boom. Didn't happen. So my Eagles, I got them at 10-6. I wanted to go 11-5, but I'll go 10-6, which I think is good enough for a wild card spot.
Go ahead, Dylan.
Okay. I agree with some points that hold on, let me do this real quick. Okay. So I agree with some of the points that Adam was bringing up. I do like some of the potential that the defense has created for themselves. I think they're going to be a significantly better team than they were last year. Last year, I think they were hovering around. One of the key things is that they won some really good home games. They couldn't do a lot of road situations, and that was key for them. I like that about that aspect. I do see some potential. I do see that they're going to get better. I will definitely say they will be better. They went 7-9 last year, right? So I think they will definitely improve on some aspects. I think Carson Wentz is going to take a big step up. We had that conversation of who was the quarterback coming in, like between the two in the division, between the Cowboys and the Eagles. And while Dak did take over charge at some point during the season, we did see some potential in Wentz, and I did like him. This year, I think they do play a tough schedule. I think that's one of the critical things for me looking at this team. We look at some of the games. I'm pulling them up here. They play the Chiefs. They play the Giants twice, of course. They'll play the Broncos defense. They'll play the Cowboys. They'll play the Seahawks. They'll play the Raiders. There's a couple of these hard teams that they're going to have to get past. And while I do think they'll win a couple of those, I think they'll win a couple of division games, my record is 9-7. I think that they will improve. I think they'll slightly miss the playoffs just because I think there's a team or two that even last year I was very high on to get into the playoffs, and I think this year they'll make the jump to get there. But I think this will be an improving season, and by next year, I think all three of the four teams in this division could easily contest for this 11-10 win season. So I'm going 9-7, just as my predictions on this team.
Yeah, there's a lot I really like about the Eagles. I like the Jeffrey acquisition. I like the Blunt acquisition. I like Carson Wentz. I think the defense has a lot of potential. I think they're well coached. I just think that they're in the wrong division this year, but I can see them next year winning the division. I think that they're the team on the rise. I think Carson Wentz is probably your third best young QB right now in the NFL, behind Winston and Mariota. At this point of this conversation, we could be having a different conversation later in the year. But I see a lot of potential, and I see the Eagles next year I think the Eagles are building something very good. But this year I see it sort of a 9-7. I think that the fact that they're having a tough schedule is going to actually benefit them in the long run, because I think they're going to learn a lot. I 9-7, not making the playoffs, but I think good things coming for the Eagles.
Yeah, I have them at 9-7 as well. I don't have them making the playoffs, but I have them finishing third in the division. I like the Eagles. I like their talent. I like their defense. A lot of same things you guys are saying. I really like their defensive line. Brandon Graham had the second most pressures in the NFL last year. A lot of people didn't realize that. Fletcher Cox, one of the best D tackles in the league, and probably the guy I would pick to win me a bar fight, probably for anyone in the league. And then, the cornerback situation always been kind of down on that, but I think I even gave them a win when they added Ronald Darby, because I think you look at him 2 years ago, he was one of the best graded corners in man coverage. And I think that's what they really ultimately want to do, is play more man. Schwartz is a really good coordinator. I think their defense is going to be good. Their offense, I'm not as sold on Wentz as some people. I think he has a lot of athletic ability, but it's kind of like last year he started off really, really well. And I don't know if it was because he didn't have weapons or not, but once they started clamping down on the short passing game, he wasn't as successful second half of the season. And if, they need to kind of let him loose, and hopefully his athletic ability can just shine through, because I think he has that athletic ability and he has that ability to throw the ball down the field, but he didn't really do it last year. I actually have Dak ahead of him in those quarterback rankings, but I do like the Jeffrey signing. If he can stay on the field, he's an elite #1 receiver. The whole Jordan Matthews trade, I think, was a good trade, not only because they got, Darby in the whole situation. They got a pick, but also he wasn't going to sign next year. They weren't going to sign him. He only was 1 year left on his contract, and they were going to sign Alshon Jeffrey if they had the choice. So their offensive line is underrated. I agree with Adam, but I think they're going to be a good team. They're going to get 2 wins more than last year. I just don't think they're quite good enough yet to make the playoffs in this division.
Yeah, and you bring that up with Wentz later in the season. The one thing that kind of I do like is he didn't have great games, but with that defense and with even worse cornerback play last year, then I do think we get better cornerback play, but that's not saying much because it was just so bad last year. There were a lot of games that Wentz did have the ball in his rookie season to score some points to either win or tie, I think about 6 times, and games that he couldn't get it done, a couple bad decisions. I'm just expecting to win more than half of those games this time around to kind of push them above. And as the NFC East, the team that the Eagles always play worse against, for reason, is the Redskins. But if you look at the Eagles, even when they've been
I bet on them twice last year. They lost both those freaking games.
Always lose against the Redskins. For some reason, the Redskins. But the one thing I do like, and Cowboys, it's always kind of maybe they split it here and there. But we play very well against the Giants for some reason. Historically, the last 5, 6, 7 years, we played very well against the Giants. For some reason, even in down years, we seem to win against the Giants. So I'll be there. First game at the Link.
Hey,
Eagles home opener against the Giants. So that's when we'll get.
I'll be at least at one Cowboys game this year.
That's awesome.
All right, so we're pretty even on one guy has the Eagles fan has them going to the playoffs.
I only have one more win than you guys.
Yeah, that's fair
and
enough.
then the wild card.
No, but we're pretty even. 10-6, 9-7 for the Eagles. Next, we have the Washington Redskins, which I feel like is going to be the most up and down team for everyone because I was the only one that really notched the Cowboys down. But the Redskins here, I'm just a big fan of Kirk Cousins, so maybe I'm biased, but I like that, man. I like that. He's the best quarterback in this division. He threw for nearly 5,000 yards last year. This offense was great. It was their defense. Their defense couldn't stop basically anything. Josh Norman was good last year, actually. A lot of people didn't really realize that, but their defense got a major upgrade. And I look at their defense. They have one of the sneaky best linebacker cores in the NFL. They added Zach Brown, who was really, really good for the Buffalo Bills. I would know that because I'm a Patriots fan. Ryan Kerrigan is still there. Preston Smith had a pretty good season last year. They have a good pass rush now, and they got Allen in the draft. They couldn't stop the run, which is huge. They added him. They also added another guy in the interior. I forgot, but in free agency. And then maybe, yeah. But they added someone. And then at cornerback, they still have that question mark. Who's the second corner? Breeland is just not that great, but their secondary is going to be a little bit of an issue. But I think with their pass rush and now their improved ability to stop the run, they'll be a little bit better. Offensively, Terrell Pryor is an upgrade, as I said. Jamison Crowder is awesome. I think he's going to have a breakout year this year. The running back situation isn't the greatest, but their offensive line is also pretty good. Trent Williams is amazing. Jordan Reed hopefully can stay on the field. And I think the Redskins are actually going to be in the playoffs. I have them at 10-6.
That's interesting. I have them at 8-8. I feel like with this, I made the bold prediction that I don't think any team in this division will go under 500. I still believe that. As it's getting really light in here, but that doesn't matter. I feel like the Redskins, they do have some positives. They always have Kirk Cousins being a good quarterback, a solid quarterback. That can throw a lot of deep balls. He reminds me a little bit of a Drew Brees character. He just has he has a solid, fundamentally sound throwing game. It's just his defense really depends on him a lot, and they don't do much to give him that satisfaction of winning a lot of games. It's always one of those teams where I think they're very inconsistent, and I don't know if they exactly have it, especially against 3 difficult teams in this division. I had all of them going at least 9-7. So for me, I feel like this team can do some things that are going to be sneaky, I did like the Terrell Pryor pickup. I think there's going to be some good players, but I feel like they're going to be the systematic choke team of this division. I have a feeling. So I'm going with 8-8. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I'll give Mitch the credit, but I do not have this team in the playoffs.
Yeah, I'm the same way with you. I think they're going to be one of those up and down teams, not being able to close out games or their defense shutting down at the wrong time. I do like what they've added on their defensive line. I think Trent Murphy being out a while is going to hurt them because I think he's been a stud on that defense. When you look at their corner, we just don't know what Josh Norman we're going to see, right? I think Josh Norman is the best when he gets to go against the number one receiver. But for some reason, we've talked about this before, is like a lot of the times they had him just playing one side of the field, which is great. But we've seen them get torched when like a Breeland's trying to cover Odell Beckham or Des Bryant or whatnot. So I'd like to see him go against the number one guy every single week. And then when you look at their receivers, yes. In my opinion, I actually don't think Pryor makes up for Garcon and Jackson, in my opinion, because Jackson was that deep threat. How many big plays did Jackson make last year out of nowhere? He was hit or miss. Like sometimes he wouldn't get a catch, but those big games, he was good for a 70-yard.
Pryor had 1,000 yards with Cody Kessler.
Yeah, but
he was one of the most efficient deep threat receivers in the league.
Okay, but when you're losing, when you're behind,
as well as Jamison Crowder, bro.
No, but when you're behind, you don't think that helped at all when the defense is just playing like whatever, their
no, I do, but
I'm
saying that Terrell Pryor was one of the best deep threat receivers in the league with one of the worst quarterbacks in the league.
I don't think
was it deep threat? Was it just like straight downhill?
Yeah.
Or was it more routes? Like, was it just he was deep threat like Jackson is? I don't think
according to the statistics.
Well, and catches, but like, what are we talking? Like, I didn't see a lot of Pryor.
Like,
was he
in terms of how many balls he was throwing deep down the field, he caught?
Okay. Well, okay, but still, even Garcon and Doxson, that's one guy. You're going to be able to I think there's some decent like Darby going against him. Like what type of DBs we're playing? I think the DBs are a lot better in the NFC East than the AFC North, right? Like he's going against the Steelers twice, the Ravens twice.
Yeah, but he's got Kirk Cousins instead of Cody Kessler.
Well, I know. So then you could just say it evens it out. I just think Deshaun did a lot for that team. Plus Garcon in the locker room did a lot in his older age, still did a lot for that team. And I don't think we haven't seen anything. Everyone's talking great about Doxson, but we haven't really seen him play. He's got the talent.
I would love to play. I think he'll be very good. But
I think he'll be decent, but I just think that defense still, Breeland as your corner.
I'll say this. It depends on Jordan Reed. If Jordan Reed could stay healthy for a majority of the season, because people forget this, but he's like a top 3 tight end in the NFL. Like he's unstoppable when he's on the field. So it depends if Jordan Reed can stay on the field. That's the question mark.
Yeah. I just think that in my opinion, the way the Redskins treated Kirk Cousins and have been treating him, Kirk Cousins doesn't owe them anything. He'll want to play very well for his contract. I just think in the grand scheme of things, I think the Redskins don't deserve to have a winning season this year. You can't not pay your guy. You can't treat him like that 2 years in a row when he's winning you games and you don't pay him a big contract. I don't get it, and that's a big part why I don't like them, because they're letting their star quarterback that's helped them win games the last 2 seasons just out to dry. Obviously, they're giving him good money once a year, but why can't you just pay the guy?
Yeah, I don't like that either. I'm not a fan of that.
I think Kirk Cousins is the reason why they make the playoffs. Kev.
Yeah, maybe.
I have him at 7-9. I think the big loss is Sean McVay, their new LA Rams coach. I think their offensive coordinator did a lot of things with that team, and that's going to be a huge loss. I don't think their receivers are as good as you think, Mitch. I think they're young, but I
think they're better, actually.
I don't.
I think Crowder's better than Deshaun.
I can't. Potential maybe, but not maybe. But
I haven't seen enough. I mean, he could be, but I haven't seen enough for me to be like
Deshaun at this point, not Deshaun in 2009.
But they're different because Crowder doesn't stretch the field. He's more underneath.
No, he stretches the field. Go ahead.
I think that's debatable.
Yeah. I think Jay Gruden's on the hot seat. I don't think he's as good as a coach as people think. I think he's had a lot of other. I don't think that this defense is as good as you think that they are. I don't think Josh Norman is a top 5 quarterback. I think I've seen receivers beat him badly.
Never said he was top 5, but I think he's a good number 1.
He's not the best corner in the division.
Nope. Janoris Jenkins is better.
Yeah. And I just look at where the Cowboys are. You look where the Eagles are. You look at the up and comingness of Philadelphia. I don't see this team. This team is in this mediocre meh. I don't think they did enough. I think Jonathan Allen's a good acquisition, but I don't think they've done enough to really seriously compete for the NFC East. I have them at 7-9. I don't think they make the playoffs.
There you go.
Fair enough. So our overall standings, for myself, I have the Giants at 11-5, the Redskins at 10-6, the Eagles at 9-7, and the Cowboys at 7-9. We'll go down the road.
Okay, I guess I'm now. So for me, I have the New York Giants at 12-4, the Dallas Cowboys at 10-6 with a wild card appearance. Philadelphia Eagles 9-7, Washington Redskins 8-8.
I have Dallas 11-5, Giants 10-6, Philadelphia 9-7, and the Washington at 7-9.
I have Giants 12-4, Eagles 10-6, Cowboys 9-7, Washington 8-8,